Down the Law is sponsored by Battle-Born Injury Lawyers.
Nevada's COVID-19 task force is set to meet tomorrow just before restrictions on bars are set to expire. It's been a source of contention as 60 bar owners joined together in a lawsuit seeking a judge to overturn the governor's directive limiting their operations. But a judge sided with the governor, keeping those bars closed. Attorney Matt Hoffmann with Battle-Born Injury Lawyers joining us now to break down the law and talk about really what this means for our state. Matt, moving forward.
Oh, thanks for having me on this issue. So, what the bars did in this is they filed for injunctive relief. So they're asking the court to declare that this July 10th directive closing them essentially is, unconstitutional, that it violates their due process and equal protection. And before the judge can ever rule on that, they filed this motion for a temporary restraining order and a temporary injunction. And what they're basically saying is, why wait until the end? We think that this issue, we're going to obviously win on it. And that's what the court ruled on Monday. Now, the court came down on the side of the state, but only in one of two ways. So the biggest issue that gets the headline is that the judge said this doesn't violate the equal protection or due process. It's, reasonably related to a legitimate government purpose, that it was rational, that it wasn't arbitrary and unreasonable what they did. Conversely, though, the state had argued that the courts have no authority to question the judge's emergency or the governor's emergency declarations. And the court actually disagreed with them and said, no, these are absolutely reviewable by the courts. And that's significant, because theoretically that could open the floodgates for anybody to challenge any of these directives. Instead of being 50, 60 bar owners grouping together, you could see 50, 60 separate lawsuits and a different judge may rule differently. So that's all the legal stuff. The interesting part of this decision is, what they're arguing is that you're treating one class of business doing the exact same thing completely different from them. And this is one of the rare times where we're talking about a case, and I'm going to kind of be opinionated. I think the judge got this wrong. I don't see how anybody could say that this is not arbitrary and unreasonable, the way that these bars and taverns are being treated compared to other restaurants and casinos. And if you put aside any opinions we have on whether there should be any gaming or if any restaurants should be open, I totally understand those opinions. The fact is that they are. And the questions that I have is, number one, what is the difference between 4 people going into a restaurant, sitting at a table, eating and drinking, versus 4 people walking into a tavern and just drinking? What's the difference? There is no difference. It's people walking in with masks, being seated, and then sitting at a table for an extended period of time. There's absolutely no difference whatsoever. And then the other one is the gaming. And this was the big issue, because the bars and taverns, they rely on gaming for their revenues. So what is the difference between a video poker machine on the floor of a casino with plexiglass, with the patrons wearing masks and they're distanced apart, versus the exact same machine with plexiglass, every other machine is shut down, patrons wearing masks, but it just happens to be on top of a bar? What's the difference? And there is no difference. Logically speaking, there is absolutely no difference. So I don't agree with this decision. I think the bars and taverns are absolutely correct. I think this is arbitrary and unreasonable to treat 2 different businesses so differently. And I think that the end game on this is that before there's appeals, before a bunch of lawsuits get filed, I think we're going to see this roll back. And I think that the bars and taverns will be allowed to reopen, subject to all the rules of 50% occupancy, plexiglass, things like that.
And that is something, Matt, that we could see as early as tomorrow, but interesting because, of course, we can almost expect these bars to appeal. Definitely a strong opinion from you, but it's interesting to see how the law breaks down, and we certainly appreciate you kind of delving into it and giving us a good perspective of what they were going after and now what could potentially happen. Always great to have you on the show, Matt. Great insight. We appreciate it. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week, as always.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you.